Good evening. I'm Anthony. I am the founder and lead instructor for the Zen Happiness Project. I'm so glad you could join us today to get started here for our spring 10-day meditation challenge. We're going to do something a little different than we normally do for these introductions. We're going to start out with a guided meditation. So if you've never meditated before, I just encourage you to make yourself a little comfortable, try to sit upright, and just listen to the meditation, and we'll go for about 15 minutes or so. And then we'll talk a little bit about the practice and some of the some tips for how you can navigate your daily practice on your own. I'm on the road, I'm traveling, so I don't have my nifty little bell, so I'm gonna go ahead and just take a second here to take a deep breath, and then I'll go right into the guided meditation. We're going to start our meditation today with a body scan. A body scan is a simple practice. We're just going to bring our attention, starting at the very top of our head and moving through our body. We're just going to become aware of the physical sensations. We're going to look for any stress or tightness. We're going to invite those areas to relax. This will help us settle into our practice. It'll be a little bit calmer, a little more present. We're going to start by bringing our attention to the very top of our head. Is there any tightness around your temples, your forehead, your scalp? Just imagine that tightness, that tension melting away. Feel those areas soften, relax. Space around your eyes, through your cheekbones, into your jaw. We're going to have our mouth shut. We're going to breathe in and out through our nose through this meditation, but we don't need to clench our jaw. We can simply let our mouth rest in a closed position. We're going to continue our body scan, bringing our awareness down through our neck, into our shoulders. Just feel our shoulders relax, our chest expand and open up, our shoulder blades slide down our back. If there's any tension, any tightness, I'm just going to let each breath slowly, quietly help us settle into the meditation. We're going to continue our body scan down through our rib cage, into our stomach. Feel the expansion and contraction of your lungs. There's a soothing quality to the air moving in and out, almost like sitting by the side of the ocean, watching the waves rolling in and out. With each breath, we feel ourselves slow down, become a little more present. Continuing our body scan, we move down through our hips, into our thighs, our knees. Are we bouncing our leg? Are we shifting in our seat? We're just going to calm down, settle in, feel ourselves melt into the chair that we're resting in. We're going to continue our body scan, our calf muscles, down to our ankles, all the way to the very tips of our toes. Any tightness, any tension, we're just going to take a minute here and let that melt away. Now that we're settled into our body, we're going to turn our experience and awareness right to the very tip of our nose, where we first come in contact with air. Cool air rushing in, warm air rushing out. There's something amazing about this experience. It's always available to us, yet like so much of our life, we just miss it. We're too worried about the future, too caught up in anger or depression about the past. We're going to let all that go and just simply experience the breath right on the tip of our nose. We're going to follow the course of our breath in through our nasal cavities, down the back of our throat, into the expansion and contraction of our lungs. Just take a minute. Really feel the air as it enters and exhales, in and out. As you sit here experiencing the breath, notice how the whole body is affected by each breath. Everything's interconnected. There's a fluidity. Each breath moves every cell in our body. If you don't feel your body gently moved by each inhale and exhale, look for where there's tightness in the body. Invite that area to soften, to relax, to be at ease. We're going to engage in a practice now of just trying to hold our attention in a fixed point on the experience of the breath. If your body is relaxed, if your posture is good and upright, if your shoulders are nice and open, if your breathing is deep and relaxed, you feel the extension of every breath almost as if the breath finds its way all the way into your belly. The expansion and contraction of your diaphragm gently pushes your belly in and out. We're going to experience the breath, that movement of the breath, all the way down in hara. Hara is a Japanese word. It translates as lower abdomen. It's the physical and spiritual center of our body. Breathing in and breathing out, we can experience a calming, settling effect as we place our attention deep into the center of our body. And all we're going to do is we're going to count each breath. Inhale, count 1. Exhale, count 2. Inhale, count 3. Exhale, count 4. We're simply going to count 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And when we get to the count of 10, we're going to release the counting and just go back to the count of 1. And if your mind is anything like my mind, it'll quickly start to become distracted. When we recognize thinking, we're going to let go of that thought by returning our attention and experience directly to the experience of our breath. When we start our counting over, inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 3, 4. Okay, thank you. It was a nice way to start our time together today. I appreciate that. So we're starting the spring 2016 10-day meditation challenge. It looks like there are a few people here in the live stream. I'd love if you're on a mobile device. I think there's a little option down at the bottom for chatting. If you're on a laptop or desktop, there should be a chat feature just to the right of this video here. Love if you introduce yourself by first name, where you're from. I'd love to hear if this is your first meditation challenge with the Zen Happiness Project, or if you're one of our regulars. And most importantly, I'd like to hear why you're participating in this challenge. I think it's always nice to hear about the diversity of things that motivate us to develop and stick with our meditation practice. I think it can be helpful for everybody if we share that. This chat feature is also a great place to ask any questions you have over the course of the next 30 or 40 minutes that we'll be chatting. And if for some reason, if you can't use the chat feature, or if you're watching a recorded version of this after the fact, you can always email me directly at zenhappinessproject@gmail.com. That email address is in the information section just below this video as well. So I want to start off just by introducing myself. Giving you a little bit of background. And you know, I do this for two reasons. The first is there's no real credential, right? I never lived in a monastery. I don't have a degree in counseling or therapy. I haven't really seen any certification programs that I really trust in terms of saying this person is a meditation instructor, this person isn't. So I'd like to give you a little bit of my background so you can get a sense if I'm somebody that you want to trust or listen to, give you some sense of how much weight you want to put behind my words. But I also want to share my experience because I hope to give you a little bit of hope, right? When I started meditating in 2008, my life was really pretty stressful. I was suffering from anxiety. I'd started having panic attacks. I really needed some solution. What I didn't realize as well is I was also suffering. I was pretty discontented with life. I was 25 years old. I had started a professional career. I was early on in a marriage. And life didn't feel as satisfying as I had wanted it to be. There was just a level of discontentment, a level of uneasiness that really permeated every aspect of my life. I had had my third panic attack in 2007, and I went to see a therapist who recommended among some other solutions that I try meditation. And I was very lucky. I have a friend, we used to call him Tom the Buddhist. Actually, we still do. And I asked Tom if he could teach me how to meditate. So Tom took me with him to a Sunday night yoga class. That after the yoga class, the teacher would do a half-an-hour guided meditation and then discussion about meditation. That half-an-hour guided meditation was the first time I felt comfortable in my own skin in weeks. It was amazing. The very first time I meditated, it was like there was a 20-pound bag taken off of my shoulders. I joined 2 meditation groups that met weekly, and I started meditating with those groups. The format was pretty similar. We would meditate for a little while and then have a discussion around meditation. And for the first year that I practiced, most weeks it was the only time that I meditated was when I was in that session, in that group. I got a lot out of showing up for those meditation groups, but the rest of the week was still pretty rocky. In 2008, the end of 2008, I went on my first meditation retreat at a Zen Buddhist monastery, and had just a life-changing experience. I had a weekend-long retreat and instantaneously fell in love. I knew it was for me. I became a student of that Zen Buddhist monastery in 2009. I took vows as a student. I continue to practice at that monastery. I have a teacher and a relationship with that place where I continue to go to sustain and develop my meditation practice. But there was something very important that happened to me after I went on that meditation retreat in 2008. I started meditating every day. And while that weekend was really wonderful and transformative, it was this daily practice. And I started out with merely 5 minutes a day, but I did that every day for a month. And that was when I really experienced the transformative benefits of a meditation practice, right? There's something absolutely radical about pausing, being still, and really just experiencing our breath for a couple of minutes. It's this really radical notion. And if your mind is anything like my mind, it's going 24/7 from the moment I wake up until the moment I go to sleep. Heck, I think it even's going pretty crazy in my dreams someday. So this practice of just being still, of learning how to train my mind to place my focus and attention where I want it to be, has really been life-changing. It's developed a lot of emotional self-awareness, emotional intelligence, self-awareness. It's given me a baseline of emotional stability and calmness that I think allows me to absorb the ups and downs of a typical day in a lot better of a fashion. And then through this, there's also been a lot of personal growth, both emotional and spiritual growth that I was not expecting. When I first started meditating, I just didn't want to have panic attacks anymore. And then I got this really wonderful practice that has, gosh, I've lost 50 pounds because of my meditation practice. I started eating healthier and being a little more physically active. I'm just a happier person in general. I learned because of the habit formation and the discipline of a daily practice, learned how to start saving money. I got out of some credit card debt, and really just this one practice, this one daily practice has had a really transformative effect in many ways. So what happened to me after 2009, and I'll make this short, I'd like to check in and read here. It looks like a few people have contributed a little bit of who they are here in the chat room. In 2009 to 2011, I continued to practice with these meditation groups and then going on retreats to the monastery. And then what happened in 2011 is I moved to Northeast Pennsylvania. And there were no meditation groups outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania. So I was working at a college. I was lucky enough to meet some spiritually inclined people, and we started sitting together. But my friends didn't know how to meditate, so I started just giving them a few tips, explaining how I did it, and started to see how meditation practice was taking hold in their life. And I found that to be a very rewarding experience. In 2013, I started a master's in education and decided to focus my master's work and research on habit formation commitment devices for meditators. What I was seeing as I was starting to introduce college students and other friends to meditation, 2011, 2012, was the instruction wasn't hard, right? This isn't really challenging. I mean, we're going to talk a lot over the next half an hour about how to meditate, but it's not really very complicated stuff, right? We're just going to be here. We're going to see our mind for what it is. We're going to recognize thinking. We're going to let it go. We're going to return to the experience of the breath. We're going to talk about this 4 R's that I like to use as a basis for our practice here: the recognizing thinking, releasing it, returning to the experience of the breath, and most importantly, repeating this over and over again, right? So the meditation practice itself is simple, but starting to meditate every day, much more challenging, right? We all know how difficult habit formation is, because every January 1st, many of us have wonderful, life-enriching ambitions to learn a new language, save some money, lose weight, start exercising, whatever our goal for that year is. And yet, most of us have failed before the first week of the year is even up, right? So I started researching and studying habit formation, and that's an important part of what we'll talk about through all of the Zen Happiness Project challenges and emails. It's a pretty steady theme for us, because really what we're trying to do here, and especially clarified in the way that we're doing this 10-day challenge together, we're trying to reinforce that this practice is a daily part of our life. And again, this really arises from my experience as a meditator, that going on retreats and sitting every once in a while was wonderful, but my life really changed for the best once this became a regular part of my life. And we'll dissect a little bit about why that is too. So this 10-day challenge is a great way. We keep returning to this every couple of weeks, because, well, for right now, I started this year working as a consultant. I've been a professional fundraiser. It was what I do in my professional life. And I've been working for myself, so I have all this, freedom to dictate how my day is going to unravel. And I've also been traveling a lot these last few months. I've been on the road for about 4 weeks now, and I have more time than I normally do. And I'm finding that I'm practicing less. My routine is disrupted. My, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, leave for work at 8 o'clock. Normal morning routine is different now. So, I got my friends together to start this challenge specifically because I still, after all of these years, need help staying on track. So it looks like we got some contributions here in the chat room. Melody is joining us from Iowa. This is her first time meditating, so we're going to give her, hopefully she'll get a good sense from the introduction over the next half an hour about how to do the practice. Our friend Dusty is back. She's one of our instructors here at the Zen Happiness Project. Dusty's led some great meditations in the past, particularly on metta meditation, which is a great resource. You can check out the Zen Happiness Project webpage, the resources webpage, if you want to see Dusty's excellent guided meditation on loving kindness meditation. Michelle in Florida is looking to regain her stillness. Michelle, that's excellent. I mean, you're 100% in the right place. And, one of the ways that I like to talk about this is that our mind, our calmness is like a dirty glass of water, right? If you mix in some dirt and some water and you shake it all up, it becomes clouded. And how do you separate the dirt from the water? You let it sit, right? And slowly over time, the dirt settles to the bottom and the clear fluid emerges in the top. The only problem is it takes a long time to settle and it takes very little time to shake it back up. So part of the reason I think a daily practice is so valuable to us is that we need to keep returning to this calm and settled place so we can get that clarity emerging again, because inevitably it's going to get disrupted, right? So thank you, Michelle. I'm glad you're here. Tracy is in New York. This is her second 10-day challenge. Thanks for coming back. She wants to start expanding her daily meditation a little bit. That's great. My big tip for people who are beginning is really, it takes on average 66 days to establish a daily habit. So really focus on, for the first 2 months, the idea of sitting for 1, 3, maybe 5, absolutely no more than 10 minutes a day, right? We're gonna set such a low barrier to entry that we can really create that daily habit. But in creating that habit, we can then build off of that. So if you feel a desire to meditate for 15 or 20 minutes a day, which many people after a year or two or so of meditating like to work up to that point, you can do that after the daily habit is successfully established. That's great. Bridget and Corey are from Cleveland. It's their first challenge. Welcome to our little community here. They're looking to develop a regular meditation practice. My friend Judy is back from South Jersey. She is looking to work on the daily habit. That's great. Tom's there with her. Tom's looking to clear his head, wants to stick with it. Judy and Tom, I hope through my example of talking about how I, after 8 years of practice, still need help returning to this daily habit, give you some confidence that this is a truly human experience, right? For me, when I'm stressed out or busy, the first things that go out the window are my exercise, meditating, and healthy eating and sleeping, right? So the 4 things that give me the emotional stability that allow me to handle stress and busyness well are the first things that I abandon the second I get stressed and busy. I think a big bonding effect, the reason there's so many people return to the challenges over and over again, is because we need that support. I still email every day with the group of 7 practitioners from that first meditation group that I joined back in 2007. And we just are checking in, sharing whether or not we meditated that day, what we're reading, what we're experiencing in our meditation practice. And I still need that support after all of these years. So I'm glad you've returned and you continue to keep working with this. I think a daily discipline is always going to require a little bit of help. Melody's headache disappeared during the warm-up meditation. That's great. Terry's from Georgia. It's her first time meditation group that meditates often, but she's learned at a comprehensive school. That's great. So we're brushing up a little bit here. And Teresa is looking to reduce stress and become more peaceful. I do want to, I'm not saying this is Teresa's experience, but I do just want to put a general warning about anxiety and meditation out there. I think this is a practice that's best suited. If you're a little nervous energy, you got some anxiety and sort of typical stress, it's a great practice. It'll help you out instantaneously. If you have stress that's PTSD, panic attacks, really chronic stress, stuff that's really disrupting your life and leading to maybe unhealthy drinking or eating or drug abuse, these are warning signs that you might need something in addition to meditation. Meditation is a really powerful tool for addressing anxiety and distress. But for those of us like myself who suffer with a diagnosable issue around depression and or anxiety, I really think meditation is a great tool in addition to therapy. I've just benefited so much from good therapeutic relationships in my life, and would encourage anybody who is finding more than just sort of everyday stress to see if they can find themselves to the assistance of a professional as well. This really complements that kind of relationship very nicely. So I'm going to jump into my introduction of the practice a little bit here, and I'm going to try to keep it to half an hour because I'd like keep this whole session to an hour in length. So I'm going to start by talking about 2 things that meditation is not, right? The first is our meditation is not an escape, right? I think many of us, especially those of us who come to a practice because we're a little stressed out or we've got some challenging time in our life, we're looking for a way to get out of ourselves, right? We're looking essentially for a different way to get high, right? Maybe drinking isn't our thing. Maybe you're not, going off doing some recreational drugs, and we're just looking for a different way to change or alter our mood. And while it's true that many of us experience some calmness and some quieting effect that goes along with meditation, that's not always the case. And a Zen practice really is about showing up to our life, all right? So what we experience is letting go of thoughts and distractions and returning to the experience of the present moment. And sometimes the present moment isn't always pleasant, right? I was traveling the other day. I had kind of a rough day in the car. It was some back issues, and I'd been skydiving, and I took a little bit of a hard landing, and my back was just killing me. And I sat for 20 minutes that morning, and I had uncomfortable, painful meditation. And there's no other way around it, right? So what I experienced for that 20 minutes was physical discomfort. I also noticed that I was having some anxiety about the pain. I was imagining, oh no, I'm in the car, I'm going to be driving for so many more hours over the next couple of days. Is this only going to get worse? I was having some anticipatory fear. And I don't want to get too carried off in this example, but one of the things that's really valuable about my practice was you could see there was two kinds of suffering there, right? I was having the physical pain, which I couldn't do much about during my meditation practice. I had stretched, I'd used a little ice, which helps, and I'd taken some Tylenol. But other than that, there was just going to be the physical discomfort. But there was a second kind of discomfort happening there, and it was the mental discomfort. That's the extra part. That's the part that we can free ourselves from with our meditation practice, right? So I started recognizing that I was creating additional anxiety and worry. And when I became aware of that, I was able to let it go and sort of focus on the present moment and only worry about this breath. And I think that, for me, is one of the real benefits of a meditation practice, because most discomfort, like how my back felt the other day, I can put up with. But it's that worry and the anticipation of pain in the future that was really creating a lot of anxiety. And that my meditation practice gives me the tools to recognize and let go of. So it was a little all over the place. But that first lesson is meditation is not about an escape from our life, right? So I think it's important to, the second myth that I really want to talk about here is that meditation is not turning off our mind, right? In the same way that meditation is not an escape, we're not going to experience in 3, 5, or 10 minutes, even if you sat for an hour or two, you're not going to experience a thoughtless state, right? Brains think. It's their very function, right? In the same way that eyes see and ears hear, brains think, right? So what are we doing during our meditation practice if we're going to not be not thinking? A little confusing there, right? So if we're not going to be not thinking, what are we doing? What we're doing is that we're recognizing the mind's ability to narrate or chatter or be distracted by thoughts. And we're going to let those kind of thoughts go and sort of rest in awareness and consciousness. And when thoughts start to bubble up, we're not going to engage with them. We're not going to jump on board and ride along with them, right? So we're simply going to let them go. So I think those are two sort of, I think, really valuable myths to try to free ourselves from before we even start to get into the technicalities of the practice. So that first one is that meditation is not an escape. We're learning how to be present, to be focused right here. And the second thing we're doing is meditation is not no thinking, right? We're not shutting off our mind. I hear so many beginners tell me that they're not meditating right because they can't shut their brain off. And that's not how this works, right? The brain doesn't even shut off when we're asleep. We're just learning a new way of relating to our mind and starting to develop some self-control and ability to place our focus where we want it to be. So I'll keep an eye on the chat feature here. If you have any questions, please go ahead and write them in, and then I'll stop periodically and address them. Tracy says here that she feels like she's learning about herself in what thoughts and emotions come up when she's meditating. Absolutely. Tracy, I think that's a wonderful observation. And I think one of the, and I sort of introduced my story, one of those unexpected events that happened for me was this emotional and sort of personal growth, the self-awareness, emotional intelligence that really developed from my meditation practice. And it was because instead of just being lost in the thoughts and emotions, I started learning the habits of my mind and being able to recognize them when they occurred. And I could say, there's that hypersensitivity to criticism. I'm doing that thing where I ignore the 20 positive things people say and I'm obsessing about that one negative, right? So observing our thoughts and feelings and a little bit more of I'm going to be careful with that language, but I'll say it just to be expedient, to be an observer, to be a little separated from our thoughts and feelings, to not be caught up with them, but to recognize them as something that arises and can fade away is really valuable. So let's talk about the practice. Very simple practice. I'm going to talk the most about our posture, our form here, but we're going to talk about three elements: our body, our breath, and our mind. Right? I'm going to talk the most about the body. I think that surprises people because we think this has to do with our mind, but I actually think the most challenging thing here is what we're doing with our posture. So the most important thing to know about everything we're going to talk about our body is a prerequisite for a still mind is a still body. Right? So what do I mean by that? Many of us who practice yoga or have gotten into meditation become real believers in the mind-body connection. This certainly was not something that I believed before I started meditating. I very much thought that I was my mind and this body was just a vehicle for moving my mind around, and it was inconvenient and it caused me pain, but it wasn't me. My body wasn't me. My mind was me. And I've come to a different understanding over time. I really see my mind and body as deeply interconnected. And I should have known this. It's intuitive to us, right? We have all these wonderful examples of it. When I think something's funny, I laugh out loud, right? When I'm hungry or I have a headache, I have some kind of physical discomfort, it can put me in a bad mood, right? So there's all of this interaction back and forth between our mind and body. And one of the things that we realize when we start to develop a meditation practice is that physical movement creates mental movement, just in the same way as mental movement creates physical movement. So if we're agitated while we're meditating, we might find that our shoulders are creeping up, or that we're, shaking our toe or clenching our fists, right? You can see some of these physical signs of stress and anxiety. Right. So by focusing on our posture and our stillness in our body during our meditation practice, we're going to aid the stillness and quieting of our mind. Right. So I'm not going to talk about any of the cross-legged positions of full lotus, half lotus, or Burmese, or sitting in a seiza bench. I figure if you're doing those things, that means you have some kind of experience with those and you're taking some kind of yoga class, and I'll just assume that you don't need me to talk about those. If you're not familiar with those positions and you're sort of like me and you came to a meditation practice without a yoga practice, we're going to talk about meditating in a chair. So right now I'm sitting in a chair. I've got a wonderful little pillow that I'll talk about in just a second as to why I think that's valuable here. But it's a firm seat that I'm sitting in. It's not a couch. We don't want something like a lazy boy or a comforter where we sink back in and we get an unhealthy posture and we put pressure on our back, sort of constricting some of our breathing, right? We're going to sit on a nice firm chair, a folding chair or kitchen table chair, with our feet flat on the ground, our legs at a 90-degree angle, and we're going to support our own chest. And this is where, for people like me, this little pillow comes beneficial. A little bit of lower lumbar support, right? That, our back is not a perfect straight line. There's a little bit of that curve when we got a healthy spine. And for those of us who are just learning how to sit, or if you have a bad back or a weak back like I do, we need a little bit of support. So to get our spine in a healthy position, we just tilt our hips a little bit forward, sort of placing a little bit of a curve to our lower back, and we can support that with our pillow here. It also means that there's some separation from my back against the back of the chair that I'm sitting in, all right? So the amazing thing about our spine is that it holds up all of our body. If we're not leaning to the left or right or forward or back, right, and we can sort of rock a little bit to try to find our center from any of those positions, we can stay very still for long periods of time without creating any physical tension, right? So all of the postures really revolves around this idea of creating a healthy and supported spine, really starting from the base of our spine with a little tilt to our hips and that nice supportive curve to our lower lumbar. Another tendency that most of us who are new to a meditation practice really struggle with is collapsing our shoulders forward. John Kabat-Zinn, one of my favorite meditation instructors, says that we can imagine embodying nobility. Right? I love that. I love that. There's something, our chest expands, our shoulders drop back, our shoulder blades slide down their back, and we have this buoyancy that comes along with embodying nobility, right? It sort of brings us right to a very natural and healthy place. If you're like me, I have a tendency of sticking my chin out, and we're just going to tuck our chin in just ever so slightly while we're meditating. We can look at the ground about 3 or 4 feet in front of us to help facilitate this. When we're looking straight out, we have a tendency of collapsing the base of our head there at the top of our neck, right? So we're going to just tuck our chin in just a little to help continue that healthy spine all the way up to the top of our head. In our meditation practice, we're going to keep our mouth closed. We're going to breathe in and out through our nose. And then we're going to just softly, ever so softly, gaze on the floor a few feet in front of us. I usually let my upper eyelids just sort of hang kind of down about halfway. And I just don't close my eyes all the way. I just have a soft gaze on the floor. And it's kind of trying to strike the same balance with our eyes that we're striking with our body, right? Upright and awake, present, but not shut off from the world, right? Some people struggle with the eyes sort of half open. They find it difficult. If this is challenging to you, you can go ahead and close your eyes all the way. That's perfectly fine. But if you start to notice that you're getting sleepy or a little tired during your meditation, you can just simply open your eyes and continue to stare at the ground. That lets a little light in and might be helpful for keeping you awake during the practice. The only thing we didn't discuss is what to do with your hands. Traditionally, Zen Buddhists sit in the cosmic mudra. It's this beautiful oval shape that we create in our hands. We take our active hand and we place it in our lap, palm facing up. We place our other hand on top of that. So I'm a righty, so I put my right hand down and my left hand in it. My middle knuckles from my middle fingers are touching. And then we bring our thumbs around just ever so lightly, touching, create this beautiful oval, and we place that in our lap. If that's an uncomfortable position for you, you can just simply put your palms flat on your thighs. I recommend that you avoid kind of a cross-handed position or anything that might encourage movement or any distractions with your hand. So that was a lot. And we're going to talk a lot less when we get to the breath and the mind for our meditation practice. But I really want to focus on it because I think the physical stillness is really valuable to the practice. So whether you're sitting for 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever your daily meditation for the course of this 10-day challenge is, I ask you that when you set your timer, you really make a commitment and try to honor that commitment of sitting still, perfectly still, really trying to manifest stillness throughout your practice by starting with your posture. So I don't see any questions in the chat, so I will continue. But if you have any questions about the posture, just go ahead and drop it in there. Our breath. This is not a deep breathing. We're just going to nice those. If our posture is good, if our shoulders nice and open, if our spine is healthy, if our body is relaxed, we'll notice that our breathing slowly deepens with time. It becomes relaxed and kind of happens very fluidly. Judy is telling me there is a question. Oh, look at that. Sorry. Judy asks, I understand your explanation. I thought that the idea was to kind of observe your thoughts and let them float by, but also to go for that space between the thoughts where our mind does quiet down. Yeah, Judy, I don't think that's a bad way of approaching it, but I think we have to, everybody sort of explores this a little differently, right? If you try to force the separation in between your thoughts, that activity is not going to create passivity. I like the first way that you frame that, observing your thoughts and letting them float by, that kind of a little more passive approach. I think everybody has to kind of work on this themselves, but I'll get to in a minute when we talk about the mind, these 4 R's, and how I think the most effective way for dealing with thinking really is by fully and completely bringing our experience to the breath. This just observing thoughts and letting them fade away, I don't know if I've learned how to do that in a way that has been effective in the years. And not to get mucked down in the details, but this is a little bit of the difference between a Vipassana practice and a Zen practice, right? I think an insight meditation, a Vipassana practice, probably highlights that kind of interaction with the mind in a way. In the Zen practice, I feel like we just cut the legs right out from under it. We go, oh, look, there's thinking again. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to return completely and fully to the experience of my breath. I find that to be a little bit more effective when we're first learning how to deal with our mind. So I hope that answers that. I'm going to come back to it in a minute when we talk about the mind. But to finish this about the breathing, breathing is this great tool for our meditation practice because it's always present, right? We're not thinking about breaths that are going to happen tomorrow. We don't cling to breaths that we used to have. That breath I had on Tuesday last week, it was killer, right? We don't do that. When we're breathing this breath. It's right here in the present moment. And so much, I think, of the therapeutic value that comes from meditation practice, aside from the self-awareness and emotional growth and the ability to sort of place our focus where we want it to be, is just the fact that by being with the breath, we're in the present moment, right? Right now, wherever we are, we're probably not being chased by a bear. We're probably, not exposed to the elements in any significant way, right? We're usually okay right here, right now. And the more present we can be, a little bit better we're going to find the quality of our life on a given day is. So breathing, not a deep breathing exercise. We're not going to force our breathing. If we've got nice, good posture and nice relaxed body, we're going to notice our breath all the way down into hara. Hara is H-A-R-A. It's a Japanese word that translates as lower abdomen. Technically, it's the spot about 2 inches beneath your belly button. It's the physical and spiritual center of the body. And it's a very calming place to put our attention. It really roots us into our body and into the present moment. It has a very calming effect. So when we're counting our breaths in our Zen practice, we find that to be a really valuable place to do that. Rachel, no problem if you joined us. Because it's recorded, you can always just go back and catch up later. So the last thing, we've talked about our body and the posture, we've talked about our breath, and so the last piece here is to talk about what we're doing with our mind. And in our Zen practice here, and it doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 2 days or if you've been doing this for 20 years, we start by counting our breath, right? And it's a very simple practice. When we breathe in, we count 1. When we exhale, we count 2. We breathe in, we count 3, right? So on and so forth till we get to the count of 10. And when we get to 10, we just start back over again and we return down to 1. And the practice of counting our breath is really valuable because it's a little bit like guideposts, right? It keeps us on the straight and narrow here. It's a little bit easier to realize if you're getting lost in thought, if you can't remember what number you're on, right? It kind of gives us something to, it's like a little honing beacon to bring us back to our breath, just helps us in a gentle way to be in the present moment. And the cool thing about counting to 10 as opposed to using a mantra or some kind of words or imagery is it doesn't require a lot of cognition, right? It's sort of simple. We've been counting to 10 since we were 3 years old. We're usually pretty good grasp of the first 10 numbers, right? It doesn't take sort of a heavy mental load, doesn't cause a lot of disruption. So if you're sitting for a longer period of time, if you start sitting for 15, 20 minutes, you may discover after after a couple of minutes of sitting that it's easier to just follow the breath without counting anymore and just recognizing thoughts and letting them go. For me, I have to count breaths for at least an hour before I can really just be present with the breath without getting distracted. So I think there's nothing wrong with counting. It's not something you graduate from. You just simply count. So the experience that most of us have once we set our timer, we've got this nice good posture, we relax into our sitting here and we start breathing in, counting 1, exhale, count 2, breathe in, count 3, exhale, count 4. And before you get to the count of 4, you think, oh, it's a little warm in here. I should turn the AC on. Oh gosh, I'm turning on the AC and my electric bill is going to go up. Gosh, did I pay the last electric bill? I wonder if I got paid from my client. Next thing you know, I've taken that thought and I've run a million miles away, right? And in our Zen practice, we're going to recognize that thinking. We're not going to criticize ourselves, right? It's our brain's function to think, right? The ability for us to have evolved and gotten out of the wilderness and build homes and civilization really comes from this miraculous ability to think. It's not something we're going to be critical of ourselves on. We're going to just gently recognize, oh, there I am. I'm running away again. I'm going to let go of that thought. I'm just going to return fully and completely to the experience of the breath. And for me, the only way that I've learned how to release a thought is by returning to the experience of the breath. So one of the ways that I've been talking about this recently is the 4 R's. We're going to recognize thinking. We're going to release the thought. And the way we're going to release that thought is we're going to return fully and completely to the experience of the breath, right? I love that we call this a meditation practice, right? Because when we call this a meditation practice, we're begging the question, what are we practicing for? I would argue that our meditation practice really is practice for how we want to live our life, fully and completely present, right? I have a really wonderful relationship with my mother, and we have these great conversations whenever we get chatting, and I have a tendency to want to respond enthusiastically, and that's not the way I want to communicate with my mother. When she's chatting, when she's talking, I want to listen and really be present for it. I don't want to be narrating or having a conversation with myself or preparing what I'm thinking in the back of my head while she's talking. I want to hear every single word undistracted and unfiltered by the little chatter in my head, right? So how do I do that? I recognize when I'm getting lost in thought, I let it go and I return fully and completely to the experience of my mother talking, right? And the way I learned to do that is by practicing with my meditation practice. I practice by recognizing thinking and returning to the experience of the breath. This consciousness is I could talk a lot about consciousness, and there are philosophers who could do it much more eloquently than I could. But for me, in a really simplified way, consciousness is a lot about blocking out other things that we're aware of. So this idea of returning as being the method for releasing a thought, It's been really powerful for me, right? I can't just choose to stop thinking about something. It's kind of like that whole example of don't think about the pink elephant. Whatever you do, stop thinking about the pink elephant, right? It's not possible. We can't. I have put pink elephant in your mind. Maybe you're imagining Dumbo, maybe it's a little trinket, it doesn't matter. There's a pink elephant in your thoughts right now. And the harder you try to not think about a pink elephant, you're creating more thoughts about a pink elephant, right? But what can you do? You can return your focus to something that's immersive and complete. And the experience of the breath is this really enriching and rewarding experience. It's just, it's satisfying, it's calming, it's tactile, there's just a lot to it, right? The experience of the breath, right? There's the fluidity to the motion, the cool air rushing in, the warm air rushing out, right? But that last R, right? We talked about there being 4 R's. We recognize thinking. We release the thought by returning to the breath. 4, the fourth one, we repeat this. And that's the most important one in my mind, because we need to keep going over to this practice again and again, right? We're not going to start our counting, recognize thinking, let it go, and then for the next 5 minutes of our meditation, be perfectly present without a distracting thought, right? We're going to be right back in there into the thinking again. And I want to encourage you that the practice really is that repetition. You go to the gym and you start learning how to do push-ups, and maybe you can do 20 the first time you do push-ups, right? And you're going to go back to the gym and you're going to try to do 26, 27, right? The exercises, as we get more and more skilled at doing push-ups, isn't to do less push-ups. The repeating, we do more and more. Our meditation practice is the same way. We're just going to let go of thoughts more effectively and more repeatedly through time. So that the exercise metaphor is really valuable when it comes to our meditation practice. So this would be a great time, because we're going to be wrapping up now, to throw any questions out there. But I want to just close with, re-emphasis here for the course of the 10-day challenge. I really, really encourage you to pick a really manageable chunk of time. 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, absolutely no more than 10 minutes a day. But really, I think 5 is a really magic number, especially if you're brand new to meditation. And I'll give you one little sales pitch as to why I think shorter periods are better, right? Again, you remember I said just a little while ago, it takes 66 days on average to create a new daily habit. So our first priority in the first 2 months of our meditation that first priority is just establishing a habit, right? You want this practice to last your lifetime. You don't want it to just last for the next 10 days, right? So pick that manageable time. But here's the cool thing, right? Meditating has diminishing returns, right? The calmness, the being centered or present or focused, whatever it is that you're benefiting from your meditation practice, you get more of that in the first 3 minutes than you do in the next 3 minutes. And a lot more of that in the first 3 minutes than you would out of the third set of 3 minutes, right? So we benefit the most from that first 3 or 5 minutes of meditation than we do from the next set. So there's real sort of, it's not like, oh, if I meditate for 20 minutes, finally I'll then get there, right? That's not how it works. It's settling into into our breath, into our practice, that our anxiety, stress, and energy, just our worry, starts to decrease and deflate. And the majority of that happens in the first couple of minutes, right? So if you're saying to yourself, oh, well, it's not really worth meditating for only 3 or 5 minutes, I would say it's more valuable to meditate for 3 or 5 minutes than we give it credit for, right? So let's see here. Tracy saying, trying not to get lost in thought while listening. I've been working on this myself. That's great. So that's exactly that inner dialogue, that AM radio announcer, as I like to think of them, that's just chattering incessantly in the corner. That's the voice that we're trying to turn down a little bit, recognize and let go of. AG says, I do a lot at work, even just watching how someone's mouth moves winds up getting me lost. Yeah, there's a lot we can get distracted with, absolutely. Michelle likes the 4 R's. That's excellent. Good. Excellent. So I don't see any questions, and it's been an hour. Again, if you're watching the recorded version of this and you have some questions, you can please email me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. I usually check my email first thing in the morning and then a little bit in the evening, but I usually typically respond in the morning. I usually pretty good about getting response to everybody. Oh, Judy was asking about checking in. So a few things about how the challenge works if you haven't participated in the past. So the first couple of days, we're going to talk about the basics of Zen meditation. So if this is your first time meditating, we're going to recover the basics in the first 2 or 3 days of the emails. And even if you're experienced meditating, there really are only the basics, right? I don't care if you've been meditating for 20 years, we need to keep coming back to some of these simple truths and returning to them. So we focus on the 101s in the first couple of days. We also take the opportunity to pair you up with a meditation buddy. So if you want, you'll get an invitation tomorrow to be paired up with somebody. You can just email me and I will connect you with another participant in the challenge. There's over 400 people signed up for the challenge. So usually 10 to 15% of those folks are looking for a partner. So, it's very easy for me to assign you or connect you with somebody. And that's really, I've found it to be very valuable. I get a lot of positive feedback for the people who do partner with somebody. It's just nice to be able to check in daily with somebody by email, talk a little bit about your experience, why it was hard for you to get around and sit for that day, or when you were sitting, were you feeling a little restless, or was it great and you were loving it? I think we learn a lot hearing ourselves talk about our experience, but also then hearing about other people's experience. So I think a meditation buddy is a great tool. I'll also be making myself available for some one-on-ones. For anybody who wants to take advantage of that. I'm on vacation this next week, so I've got a lot of free time. So if you want a little phone or video chat availability with me, I'm going to make that. I think on the second day, I'll put out a form for scheduling some time. We'll send out daily emails. You'll get that. Those will be authored by me or one of the other meditation instructors from the Zen Happiness Project little team. There's a growing team of instructors now. So you're going to meet some of the other Zen Happiness Project meditation instructors. And then we've got the discussion group, which is a vibrant place where there's 5,000 members who are participating in a discussion on Facebook. And that's a great way of being able to talk about your experience and hear from others. So a lot of the challenge members are connected with the discussion group as well. So I think that addresses everything. Again, thank you everybody for participating. It's very meaningful for me to be able to practice with my friends, and so thrilled you'll be joining us. And I look forward to getting to know you over the course of the 10 days of this challenge. Thank you.